Everyone who comes to Reiki comes to it for a reason. And that reason is because we're looking for tools to help us become more balanced in life.
You're going to tell me when you're ready. When you're ready, I'm ready to teach you.
An excellent Reiki practitioner isn't necessarily an excellent Reiki teacher. Welcome, friends, to the Reiki Women podcast, an exploration into the profound depths of the system of Reiki from a Japanese spiritual perspective and how that relates to our modern lives.
We are keeping it real to Reiki's origins, challenging the New Age stereotype that things like crystals, chakras, and angels are authentic aspects of the system. I'm Bronwyn Logan, and when I'm not writing best-selling books about the Japanese system of Reiki, 75,000 readers and counting, I'm here debunking outmoded Reiki myths and coaching individuals and groups through my website, Reiki with Bronwyn.
And I'm Michaela Daystar, lead teacher and weaver of Heartscapes Reiki, connecting the dots between Reiki and environmental and social justice, because our individual healing cannot be extracted from healing relationship with the collective and with the land.
And I'm Carrie from the Reiki Healing Society, here to help you transform your Reiki practice into a thriving, prosperous business. Because while passion fuels your purpose, it's time to make it sustainable, authentic, and beautifully you. We're three women diving into the heart of Japanese Reiki. We're building a community that centers women's voices and inspires well-being. We're not just for women, we're for everybody. Come join the conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Reiki Women podcast. It's so lovely to have you here today, and so lovely to share these conversations with Michaela and Bronwyn. And we're headed for a good one today. We want to talk about how to find the right Reiki teacher, and it's one that I think we've all probably gone through the questioning of, well, how to find my Reiki teacher, or maybe you studied Reiki with a particular teacher, but you don't want to expand your horizons within Reiki. You want to learn different aspects of Reiki. Um, my personal experience, I've sought out a few teachers for sure, but a lot of times teachers come to me as well too. And so I'd be curious to have a conversation with you all about how we find our Reiki teachers. Is there this kind of kismet synchronicity that happens? And when that's not happening, how do you embark on finding a teacher that really resonates for you and is going to give you a quality experience of your Reiki course and, guide you in the right direction inside of your Reiki practice? So, Bronwyn, this was a topic that you thought of, and so I know you have some really wonderful thoughts about it. I'd love to share or pass it over to you. Will you tell us more about how you find a Reiki teacher?
Yeah, you just reminded me of that saying, build it and they will come or whatever. There's all those sorts of sayings, aren't they? There is another, what's the other one about teaching? So anyway, there's another one about the right teacher at the right moment. That sort
When
of
the student is ready, the teacher will appear.
knew it. There's something like that. Thank you, Michaela. And yeah, uh, interestingly, our teachers that we do come across, they may not always be what we think at the time is the right thing. Carrie, you just mentioned we might have numerous teachers, and some of those experiences we might label as great experiences. Some of them we might label as not so great experiences. But you know what? I don't know if any of that matters because it's all going to be an experience and it's all going to teach us something along the way. So I think that's a good thing to remember. And in relation to that, I would say that I've just been doing the audiobook, still plugging away on the audiobook for the Reiki source book. And I was looking at the history when Hawaii Takata died, what happened in the West with all the teachers and people suing each other. And this one saying they're the only real teacher. And this one saying they're a grandmaster. And that all these different things happening. And I thought, now, if someone just picked up these pages, they would think, what the hell is Reiki? Because this is crazy. What are these people on about? But my thoughts are that everyone who comes to Reiki comes to it for a reason. And that reason is because we're looking for tools to help us become more balanced in life. So all of these people that I just mentioned, and the three of us here, and everyone in life is looking for balance. whether we know it or not. So often unconsciously, our body's trying to find balance. And consciously, if we are aware enough, then we're also going to be looking for balance. And that's something that the system of Reiki does offer us tools for. So thinking of that, all the people who come to it are in a place of flux, change, sometimes crisis. Yeah. And they've found that the system of Reiki has helped them in some way, supported them in some way. It has actually inspired them then to continue with the teachings and eventually become a teacher. Now, becoming a teacher doesn't mean it's an end position. The whole experience of us going through shifts and change just continues throughout our life. So as teachers, we are also always struggling with things, trying to work things out, trying to find ourselves in more balance, which means that your experience with a teacher is going to reflect how you both come together in that moment. As I said, sometimes that can be really wonderful, and other times it can be difficult. If I look at my own experience, my first Reiki teacher, I was a bit like, what the hell is this guy teaching? And I don't think he really knew what he was teaching, but I'm sure he was getting things out of what he was doing, and he was helping people. He helped me discover the system of Reiki, and I was so inspired by this energetic awareness that I received from the teachings. So though there were a lot of aspects to the class that I was a bit flummoxed by, and I thought could have been a lot better, it still inspired me. And it also inspired me when I became a teacher to think about my experiences. And did I want to teach like that? Well, I didn't want to teach like that. So it was a great learning lesson for me in that way. In this moment, as Reiki teachers, we need to think about always trying to find ourselves more consciously back in balance, especially for our students. So if you are a prospective student looking for a teacher, call them or find some way of really finding out about that person. Do you feel connected with them? There's a lot of practicalities, and I'm sure we can all talk about that. But just talking initially about that level, how do you feel about that person? And do you feel a connection with that person? If not, that's cool. Go somewhere else. That's fine. And if you do end up in a situation that it didn't actually click, that's okay too. There's a lot more teachers out there. And my last words on this are that you can have as many teachers as you like. And every single person that you meet as a Reiki teacher and just in life, you're going to learn something some way along the way. So it's all going to be helpful. And just keep that sense of beginner openness, and you will continue to learn and find out more about the system and yourself as you go along. How about you, Michaela?
Yeah, there's a couple of different directions that I wanted to go, but first I wanted to kind of springboard off of what you closed with, the idea that you can, and I would argue maybe should, or at least would be benefited by having more than one teacher. My Reiki education, which is ongoing and ideally will be for many years to come, really is an alchemy of three specific Reiki teachers and then a number of other teachers in realms that have threads of connection to the system of Reiki, and that all of those offer texture and depth and breadth to my Reiki education. And all of them meet me in different parts of my life at different times. Some teachers I have now moved away from. I consider them no longer my teachers, but I honor them as part of the lineage. Like I couldn't be where I am if they weren't there. Shifting from them to different teachers was not about a break in relationship. It wasn't about anything negative. It was about evolution of my needs and my perspectives. I think that, and I see often in Reiki spaces, it's kind of an often question or dilemma that people pose, that I'm ready to move on to Reiki 2 or Reiki 3, but my teacher is no longer teaching, or they've moved away, or for some other reason I can't work with them and now I feel like I'm stuck and I can't move forward. And so I want to just really start by dispelling that. it is a specifically, I think, Western notion that we have to like pick a teacher and stick with them forever. Other cultures have much more, particularly Japanese culture, much more openness and values, like really placing the value on having an education that is diverse in terms of our influences, recognizing that a master in one area is going to have mastery in that area and not in other areas, and that a given student is going to come with their own unique set of interests and skills and directions. And at a certain point, you're inevitably going to hit the limit of what you can receive from a given teacher based on your personal trajectory or your changing interests or whatever the case is. So wanted to just start by that it's not only okay, but I would say valuable for us to cultivate multiple teachers over time, and to tend to those relationships, right? I mean, sometimes, a relationship with a teacher can be a very close one. It can be vulnerable. There can be, like any other relationship, there can be instances of that relationship breaking or ending badly. And so we want to tend to those relationships like any others. So with that, perspective and that invitation, when I thought about kind of then, how did I go about choosing teachers? It depends on the teacher. My very first Reiki teacher was very much about synchronicity. It was very much right place, right time, a feeling that came over me. I heard this woman say, I'm going to teach my Reiki class. I didn't even really know what that was, but because of the place I was at in my life, the particular need that I had in that moment to bring, a practice like this into my life, there was just all of these synchronicities that added up to making that connection and choosing to work with that teacher and doing that for 3 years. And that was an amazing entry point. She was a wonderful entry point into the system of Reiki. And when I think about the kind of qualities or the categories that I have worked with in working with teachers and that I would invite you to consider, I don't always lean into alliteration, but what came out was alliterative. It's values, vision, and vibes. That's kind of how I would recommend that you look at who you choose. You will weight those categories differently depending on your needs for a given teacher and just your priorities generally. But generally, there should be some combination of alignment around your values, your vision, and the vibes between you and the person. So values, what is it that is important to you? How does that get reflected in the teacher that you're working with? How well are they articulating that? How well can they describe that to you? And do you feel that alignment in values? As an example, the way that I articulate the values of my teaching practice, obviously I have a number of personal values that are at play in how I show up as a teacher. But the kind of chiefly among them when it comes to how I share with prospective students what the values of Hardscapes Reiki is a dedication to the Japanese origins of Reiki, to be in integrity, cultural integrity with those origins, to look at Reiki fundamentally, first and foremost, as a self-practice, to let that experience with Reiki deepen inside of us, and then let that flow out to our connections, however that looks in our life. So orienting to Reiki as a self-practice first. And then thirdly, to have a social justice or social engagement perspective on our work. And for me, what that means is that I am looking at our practice of Reiki, not in a vacuum of our individual life, but in our interconnection with the web of life and with the things that matter to us in society, and that our Reiki practice can, if we choose, be something that intersects with change that we want to see happen in the world. And so for people who want to find that intersection between their Reiki practice, their spiritual practice, and change they want to see in the world, my practice would be a good one to choose. You don't have to have that emphasis, but I'm articulating that as a value. And if you have no interest in that, if you're like, I don't actually want my spiritual practice to have anything to do with stuff going on in the world or social change or any of that, then I'm probably not a good teacher for you, right? Because it will be brought up, right? It will be present. So that's an example of values. Vision, I look at that in terms of how does the teacher, the prospective teacher, What is their vision for teaching? What is their pedagogy? How do they go about teaching? How have they structured their teaching practice? Are they teaching in weekend classes? Are they teaching over a longer format? Are they teaching online, in person? Like, what's their vision for how they're going to impart this teaching to their students? And is there alignment there with your vision for how you would like to learn? And, furthermore, what is their vision for how they view Reiki interacting in a person's life? Is there good alignment there with what you want for Reiki interacting in your life? Probably a lot of other things that could fall under the category of vision, but generally, how does this teacher envision their own teaching and the way in which they would support you in bringing Reiki into your life? And lastly, vibes. You can have alignment in values, you can have alignment in vision, and you can really dislike being with that person. Right? You can, it could be anything from, the way they talk is irritating, and you're like, I cannot imagine spending hours listening to this person talk. Like, that might sound very superficial, but you are allowed to think about things like that, right? Because you're going to spend a lot of time with these folks, right? They're going to, be in your headspace. You're going to hear their voice. You're going to, be in their presence for long periods of time. Of course, there's the intangible things, right? Just how does it feel to be together? Do you feel an affinity with them? Do you feel good inside their presence, in their energy? Do you, pay attention in your own body, which is of course part of our Reiki practice? Like, does it feel settled? Do you feel grounded when you're in this person's presence, or do you feel an anxious energy? Things like that are not only reasonable, but important to consider, because again, this is somebody you're going to spend a lot of time with, and time that is intimate in the sense that you're, diving into something that is first and foremost about our interior, right? Our feelings and our sensations and our connection to the world, our spiritual practice. And so you absolutely are allowed and encouraged to notice how you feel when you are with that person, right? If it's not that you have to be like, yeah, I'd love to be friends with them. It is a different category, but are you able to receive instruction from them? Are you able to really open yourself to them and listen to them? Do they listen to you, right? What kind of vibes do they give back to you when you talk? How closely do they listen when you say what you want from your Reiki education? And I think you said this, Bronwyn, but I want to just kind of close on strongly emphasizing that if you are considering a Reiki teacher and they do not make space for you to have a conversation with them ahead of time before you commit to doing a class or a program, that is a major red flag. I would strongly encourage anybody considering a teacher of any kind to have some point of interaction with them, to have an opportunity to ask the questions, to check these categories, to make sure that there's good alignment. Some people choose a teacher without that. They don't feel the need for that. They feel like they can get the sense of it from, the person's materials that are indirect. I have had students sign up for my classes based on, enjoying my YouTube channel. That's perfectly fine. I would, however, recommend that you do seek out a conversation with that person, and just, see how you are received by them and how they are received by you. So that is what I've got, and I'm going to pass it on back over to Carrie. What do you have?
Yeah, I think this is really, a nutritious conversation. And, I think in my life, it's really been some sort of combination of synchronicity, but also, you know, once I've had an experience of Reiki, like sought out teachers to help me expand as Reiki practitioner in different capacities, right? And so I've had to not just like let that come to me, right? But like to actively seek it out. And so what I find, so in my Facebook group, it's for people who are looking to train in Reiki and who are looking for mentorship within Reiki. And so I get quite a few people who come into my group looking for a Reiki teacher. And this is one of the questions that they often ask. And I get that it's kind of challenging, maybe a little overwhelming to make the choice, especially if it's just like, Reiki's kind of on your bucket list and you're just like, oh yeah, I want to do that. But there's not this like external nudge that's telling you like, you have to do this by December or something like that, right? And so it's just kind of, it's like, I see people kind of losing the motivation. Maybe they initially get really motivated to look for a Reiki teacher, and then they either get stuck in overwhelm or indecision, and then, have a hard time following through with it. So, I think one important aspect that nobody's brought up, although I do really, what did you call it? An allegory or something? The vibes, vision,
Oh,
and
the,
values. I love
the
that.
alliteration, the three V's.
Alliteration, the three V's. Well, as a Varela, I just love the V's. So you could go V's for days, but yeah, and I think that those are so helpful. So, but one of the main things, right, is whether or not your teacher is in person with you. And so I think a lot of people get stuck and hung up on indecision with that choice, is like, do I want to do the Reiki training in person? And what's the difference between doing it online or in person? And what's the difference between doing a pre-recorded course and, doing something live with a teacher? And, it's kind of challenging with COVID, because COVID was when really everybody started to open up the idea of teaching online. But prior to COVID, if you didn't know this, like, that was not a thing. Like, we were kind of, as a Reiki industry, we're kind of anti teaching online and also teaching pre-recorded courses. So I would never recommend taking a pre-recorded course personally, because you need to have your teacher there with you in the moment, in the energy, guiding you through it, answering your questions. It's just not, it's not going to be a very educational experience. I mean, maybe from an academic level, or, just kind of a curiosity, you could take a Udemy course. But for anybody who really wants to have a solid experience of Reiki, like, you really need to study with a teacher I mean, not in person, but, live with a teacher. And I really struggled with, whether or not I would teach online or in person. And I just felt that at a certain point I had gained so much knowledge about Reiki. I'm a total Reiki geek. I mean, I know I could eat Reiki for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, you guys. I love Reiki, and I know so much about it, and I know that I have a unique perspective, right? And I've sought out different teachers, and I've cultivated a unique perspective, and not to like toot my own horn or be egotistical about it, but I felt at a certain point it was like I'm doing a greater service to expand my my ability to teach people online, because I want to share this unique perspective that I worked very hard, over a decade to gain, of experience and studying with different teachers. And so that was personally for me the reason why I've chosen to study or to do offer my courses online. And I found that they've been really well received as well. And but I think the big thing that you want to transmit to your students is this confidence that I know what Reiki is, I know what it isn't, and I know how to do it. I know how to give it to myself, I know how to give it to my pets and maybe family members or friends. And then, of course, also for those who want to become practitioners, that's like an even deeper connection that you're going to need to make with your teacher. So all of those things I think are important to consider. Um, and so I think, Michaela, you said something about, having that conversation with a teacher prior to, booking a class with them. And I think that is also very essential. Like, you should have a conversation. You should know what you're getting into. You should know what a person's experience is, and what, their approach, and how they go about teaching, and see if it really meshes with you. Some people have very different learning styles as well. Like, I've had students with ADD or other, trauma or other issues that makes it challenging for them to study Reiki in a group, for example, or like they just could not sit for 8 hours and take a Reiki course. and really get anything out of it. Like that wouldn't be beneficial to them. That's just not their learning style. That's not what supports them the best. So I think as with any teaching, is like working with your students and accommodating their needs and meeting their needs. Is really important. It looks like we're going to have a follow-up conversation on this as for Reiki teachers. How do you find your students? But here's like a little, sneak peek into that, or what I think about that is, if as a Reiki teacher, you go to somebody and just like grab them by the arm, put them under your wing and be like, hey guys, I know this amazing lineage of Reiki, and I think you would be a great student of mine. I'd love for you to have you in my course. If I ever went to do that with anybody, just want you to know that that's not the way it works. It's not the way it works. The student always teaches or chooses the teacher, and it's not the other way around. And so that's very important. And I think that's a mindset that all Reiki teachers should have, is that the students are going to come to me. And so how do we do that? And it's so interesting that why I think it's very important to get your photo taken regularly as a Reiki practitioner. And I know it's kind of feels a little vanity or something like that, but one of my yoga teachers taught me this, and I think it is so profound, is that, and it's the essence of our Facebook group too, is we're embodying the Reiki energy. We're embodying the vibration. We are embodying the practice. And my yoga teacher encouraged us always to practice yoga with our students because we were embodying it. We need to show them, we need to give them the pace. We need to be there with them in the practice and really guide them through the practice. That was her encouragement. We need to be that living embodiment of it. And it's same with Reiki, is we need to be out there. We need to be doing it. We need to be, being an advocate for it. So I have this photo on my homepage for my website, and several of my students have come to me saying, I looked up, Reiki teacher in my area, came up on your website, and I saw your picture, and it started to come to me in meditation, and it kept coming to me that like I needed to study with you, or that I've been looking for the right Reiki teacher for years. And then I went on your website and I saw that picture of you, and I just knew you were the one. And I'm like over here like blushing because it feels so awkward and a little bit, like, I don't know. I don't know what the right word is, but what the truth was, it was, or we're very, I can't think of the word right now. But this is such a compliment, right? And it does, like, it just really impacts you when you think like, oh wow, like the marketing I'm doing actually works. But it's not just about making a fancy picture. It's about living the energy and embodying it, and then just trusting that the students will find you that need you. And I have like a perfect example of this right now. I have a client who found me on my website, and he was like, I just kept thinking about how I want to learn Reiki. And then, it kept coming to me in meditation. I want to learn Reiki. I want to learn Reiki. And then I found you on your website. And then in the meditation, it kept being like me, like I was the teacher for him. And it took him even then, like several months to reach out to me and to make that final connection. So I just think, we have to be very patient with our students as well as teachers, and give plenty of opportunities. And, I've had students who've come to my courses, and like they've been trying to take the course for like 3 different rounds of Reiki courses, and they haven't been able to make it work for them. So it's also about regularity, and it's about consistency. And those are the things that I found have been very helpful for me. I'm going, though, to talk. Maybe, Bronwyn, would you like to talk about what's going on in your Reiki practice right now? Do you have any courses coming up? And feel free to share with us what's going on in your Reiki kitchen as we move into our sponsorship portion of our podcast today.
Well, I guess what I was talking about before, that I am still trying to finish off the audiobook for the Reiki Source book. If you like audiobooks, I hope you will enjoy this one. I'm almost finished. almost finished. So hopefully in the next week or two, it will be finished. It takes so much longer than you could ever imagine to do something like this. It's the editing rather than anything that takes the time. But if you like audiobooks, I would suggest also, I've done the audiobooks for the Japanese Art of Reiki, Your Reiki Treatment, Beginning Reiki, Beginning Healing. So different things that I've written. And also, there are also audios of a lot of the blogs that I've written. And that's something that I'd love you to come and get the Reiki Source Book one when it's finished, though, because I've put a lot of time and effort and love into it. How about you, Michaela?
I'm really looking forward to that and adding those to my audiobook collection, in addition to my print book collection, which they already are in. I will reiterate what I shared last week, which is an upcoming class that blends Reiki with the practice of soul collage, both of them supporting us to remember the wholeness of our true self. In this class, which is called Souls on Deck, is focused on looking at what qualities we need to really cultivate within ourselves to navigate times of change, times of pressure, when things are putting us under pressure in the world around us. What do we need in order to navigate those waters and to show up with all of our bright, shiny possibility, to have our souls be shining on the deck of the ship that we are sailing into those unknown waters, so that we can connect with others and feel resilient. And Reiki gives us an incredible map for that, an incredible structure that defines and describes the qualities that help us to be resilient and to be fully resourced in times of change and challenge. And that is to be rooted, to be spacious, to be connected. So we'll be working with the map of the three diamonds and those qualities, giving them voice and image through the practice of soul collage. And we'll do that in a 5-week live online journey that is coming up in mid-June, middle of this month. So we'd love to see you there. How about you, Carrie?
Well, I thought I'd just mention my Reiki courses. So I teach Reiki courses typically in the spring and in the fall, and I just outlined some new courses for the fall. So mostly right now I'm doing some in-person courses, but I found that with my online students that sometimes it's just easier to work with you one-to-one. And I'm also working on redesigning my Reiki courses as well. So that they're just a little bit more accessible in an online format. But if you're interested in learning Reiki, I usually have a course, either in the works or on the horizon. So you're always welcome to touch base with me about that, or join my Facebook group, the Reiki Healing Society, trainings and mentorship for Reiki practitioners. So I always post about my upcoming courses there, and you're also welcome to just shoot me your email, and I have like an ongoing list of students who are ready to train in Reiki and who are looking to learn. So thanks so much for sharing that. And I love to pass it back to you, Bronwyn Brown. Any final concluding thoughts that you'd like to share on this topic?
Yeah, just on a couple of things that you guys were saying, I guess reiterating. I wrote a blog a little while ago about the confidence thing that you were talking about, Carrie. That is really what we want to come away from a class, a Reiki class. And so finding a teacher that you feel will help you be confident in the practice, whatever it is that you need to be confident. As a student, you may have experience in some things and not experience in other things. So finding ways to fill in that experience with a teacher. So if you're not confident from a class, then you haven't really achieved what you probably should be getting out of it. I thought that was funny what you were saying, Carrie, about the choosing thing, because when I was doing the audiobook for the Reiki Source Book as well, and looking back at that history, there was this time in the 80s and the 90s where teachers were saying, oh no, I choose my students in the West. Yeah. And they were choosing their students to go on to the next level. And hilariously, the next level also cost a lot more money. I think there was a lot of unethical behavior in the past in the system of Reiki. We need to talk about it. We can't pretend that it doesn't happen. And we need to be aware. Another part of that, talking about the online courses, and it was very true that before COVID, everyone was very skeptical about working online, but we have a lot more resources these days and ways of connecting with people. I teach a lot online, and I actually love teaching online. It takes a lot of pressure off. I feel like when I'm teaching in person, I have a lot of other aspects that I need to fill in as a teacher, making sure people can find the toilet, keep making sure the cat isn't on their lap, all those sorts of things. You don't have to do any of that when you teach online, and you can really be there one-on-one with that person. And I actually think that's pretty cool. But yes, in the olden days, and it still exists today, but there's not as much that, there was a $1.99 Reiki course that you could buy online. And it had a little thing attached to it. It was like, if you have any questions, please don't contact me because I won't have enough time to answer them. Which I just think that was the problem, right? And you've both talked about that. But today, I do think that is different. I think maybe for a Reiki 1 course, for me personally, I think it's good to possibly do that in person because it is an energetic practice, and it's that thing of really understanding that. By the time we start to move into understanding more about Reiki with other levels, or just expanding our experience and wisdom and knowledge of the system of Reiki, I firmly believe we can connect energetically. We are connecting energetically right now, but it may be harder for you as a new student to really grasp that or understand that possibly. Look, everyone's different, and I think these are just things to consider if you're going into studying online. And I think, what is a teacher? I feel that a teacher is a number of things, but one thing that a teacher is also a leader. And teachers need to acknowledge that in themselves and be that leader for the students. And you both spoke about role modeling what it is to be a great Reiki practitioner. That is really important. So, as a student, looking for that, looking for someone who you think will be a good leader for you as well.
I love that so much, Bronwyn. Yeah, once again, you're providing the perfect springboard. I very much appreciate that acknowledgement that a teacher is a leader. That's absolutely true. And an excellent Reiki practitioner isn't necessarily an excellent Reiki teacher. And that's true no matter the subject. An excellent baker isn't necessarily an excellent baking teacher, right? Teaching is its own skill set. And I want to just acknowledge off the top that I absolutely have a bias coming from a university background. Like, I was trained as a university teacher, and then I was also trained as, teachers of a variety of different methodologies. I think for me and my personal, when I look back over all the different types of jobs that I've had, going back to learning to be a tattoo artist when I was 18, one of the first things I did was teach somebody else how to tattoo. And I think that I was a much better teacher than I ever was a tattoo artist, to be perfectly honest with you. I am a teacher fundamentally, no matter what it is that I'm doing. When I worked in university, when I've worked in retail shops, when I've worked in arts areas, like whatever the subject of my job, what I'm actually doing fundamentally comes down to teaching. The majority of my Reiki practice is teaching. So I have an absolute bias that teaching is its own art, and then that can be applied, and so like the art of pedagogy, right? Pedagogy being the structure of teaching. How do you teach? Can absolutely be learned, right? It's something, there is strategy, there is structure, there is a methodology for taking a subject and walking a person or group of people through it in a way that allows them to have revelations and have things be revealed and brought to their experience in a particular way that's logical and that's effective for the outcomes that you want them to experience. And so I think this is just kind of my impassioned plea for all of those out there who might want to teach Reiki, and those of you looking for a Reiki teacher, to consider the art of teaching alongside of and as an independent topic to the art of Reiki. Ask your potential Reiki teachers about their experience as teachers, not just as Reiki professionals. How do they teach? What is their theory of teaching? How did they learn to teach? Were they taught how to teach, right? In some capacity. And that doesn't have to necessarily be from a Reiki teaching perspective. You know, I had a ton of training on how to teach before I was ever a Reiki person, and that served me very well. And so when I, graduate students from my Reiki program, what I tell them is that it's up to your own discernment to self-assess whether or not you feel like you are capable of teaching. If you have the skill set for teaching that you have derived from other parts of your life, or you feel, naturally that you're inclined to do that. And if you self-assess that you need support in that is a skill set that you need to build because teaching is important to you in your Reiki practice, then I have an entire Reiki teacher apprenticeship program that goes deep into pedagogy and how do you teach? What is the framework for guiding people to the outcomes that we want them to experience when teaching Reiki, of course, in the way that I teach it, right? It's narrowly focused on how I teach. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I land, is to just really acknowledge and honor teaching as its own energy, as its own value, that it is a different skill set from practicing whatever the art is that we're talking about, Reiki in this case, and that it matters that we have some fundamental grounding in the structure and the methodology of teaching if we're going to step into teaching. That grounding can come in a wide variety of ways, right? I'm not prescriptive on how that can come to a person, but it should be considered. I disagree fundamentally with the perspective that says, as long as you've completed Reiki 3 and now you're a Reiki master, I put that in quotation marks. We've talked about that on other episodes, whether or not you're a Reiki master after completing Reiki 3. Then you just automatically are in a position to teach. For me, there is another step that at least is self-discernment of, do I have what it takes to effectively pass on what I have learned? And have I practiced it myself long enough in order to have something of substance to pass on to the next generation of Reiki practitioners? And if there's any waver, if there's any shake in that assessment, then find a teacher to teach you to teach. And it is one of my favorite things to teach teachers. It's, this meta experience of walking students back through the levels of Reiki, the fundamentals of Reiki, the concepts, the history, the perspectives, the practices, the philosophy, the spirituality, the mystery, the things we couldn't possibly even plan or anticipate to happen in a Reiki experience because they're completely out of our hands and they are in the hands of the mystery. To be able to weave, think of that, to be able to weave the anticipation of unexpected mystery to absolutely happen in your Reiki class, and to be able to be prepared to respond to it through a pedagogical lens, and to know how to leverage those moments of mystery in your learning and teaching experience. These are absolutely things that we can learn, and we should learn if we're going to endeavor to teach. And as those seeking teachers, we should ask those questions. Not only what your values are, what your vision for your class is, but how did you come to be a teacher? Tell me about that part of your journey, not just why you love Reiki. So that is my impassioned plea for the art of teaching teachers.
I love that, Michaela. And I love what you mentioned too, Bronwyn. And honestly, I still see it in Reiki groups where a couple of things that both you, Bronwyn, and Michaela mentioned. Well, first of all, is the teacher saying, well, I'll choose the student and I'll tell you when you're ready. And I think that comes from, a misunderstanding potentially of the Japanese culture, or in some senses how some things are taught in the Japanese worldview and culture, that you literally must be chosen by your teacher, and they tell you when you're ready. And And also in some lineages too, there's an understanding that, you choose one teacher, that teacher chooses you, and you just stay with them and you just study with them forever. Whether you like it or not, that's your teacher. So we live in a different time and a different era. And I think all of those, concepts and societal norms should be questioned, and I don't think they're appropriate, personally. So, but I still see people saying, my Reiki teacher told me I wasn't ready to take Reiki too. And so there's a big ethic piece there, which I think is just so important to say to your students that I'm not telling you when you're ready. You're going to tell me when you're ready. When you're ready, I'm ready to teach you. And to also just debunk the myth that we need to continuously study with the same teacher. Like, if you didn't have a pleasant experience, and my dog is having a moment, he's having some moments, but if you didn't have a pleasant experience with your first Reiki training, is to keep seeking out a teacher that might give you what you're looking for. And I've just really come to this awareness and understanding that, embarking on a Reiki course is a really big deal. And it's like a very sacred journey and a sacred experience. And you want a teacher that can really guide you through that process. And that isn't going to just be like, okay, here's time to talk about the history of Reiki, and let's do a symbol attunement, and just kind of check mark the boxes and not giving you the richness and the depth of the practice and really imparting that to you in their own special way. So I'm going to pause there, and we would love to hear more from you, our dear listeners. Tell us about your experiences of choosing your Reiki teacher. What values, what attributes, what's values, vision, and vibes. What values, vision, and vibes did you choose your Reiki teacher on? What things did you love about your Reiki training and that you wish there were more of? And share with us your positive, negative experiences. We'd love to hear more from you. And one of the things that I've learned along my way is that, as a teacher, one of our roles is to give our students the things that we didn't get. And sometimes we didn't get this experience in our Reiki courses, so we make it extra important to transport that to our students. So I think my dog's ready for a walk. What do y'all think?
Yeah.
His little nose peeking up there is very adorable, and the wind outside your window, the bushes are like this, and then your video is like dancing in the wind. Like okay. Your dog, it was a whole like moment that was happening. I enjoyed it.
He's ready. He's like, oh my God, get me out of here. Well, thank you all again so very much for listening to our podcast. We appreciate you so very much. And feel free to join our group, Embodying Reiki, and stay connected to our community. Feel free to like, subscribe, share this episode with somebody who's looking for the right Reiki teacher. We love you all. We'll see you on the next video.